Tesla has famously been working on full self-driving for quite a few years. A lot of companies have, but is it a really full self-driving? Well, it depends on who you listen to. The mainstream media has a good batch of liars out there, but social media seems not much better, sometimes worse, and sometimes they feed off each other in ways that are truly, truly bizarre. We're going to get into that today. I've got Herbert joining me from Brighter because he is just that. I'm Brian. Welcome to Future Asa. So Herbert, we're just going to jump right into it because there's too much to cover. There's some good news, there's some bad news, and there's some very, very dumb news. So we're going to start with the dumb news. Crashed Cybertruck owner claims they nearly got killed due to FSD. First of all, you did not nearly get killed. You hit a pole. But my question for you would be, you have had FSD for some time, for quite a few different versions. There are behaviors that I could list that you would say, yeah, believe it. Phantom braking. If I said I had a phantom braking experience today, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I've had that a long time ago. I haven't had that for such a long time ago, but that's a common thing that could happen, especially when you're going on an underpass, changes and so forth. You might, the car is going, hey, what's going on? Relax, slows down, slows down, decelerates quite quickly. Yeah, sure.
Pointing directly into the sun, it asked me to take the wheel. I believe you.
Yeah.
Jerking off the road into a stationary object, is that something you have personally experienced?
I've not seen a critical disengagement with FSD for even prior to FSD 11 or 12, and certainly not in FSD 13. And this particular guy, I fell for it. He had a post, right? He had a post saying, hey, this happened. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry that this happened to you. And then it turns out that this is not his first accident. He actually had a very first accident prior to this one with the Cybertruck also. So months ago. So it's like, okay, how many accidents are you having? And it's very unlike, now you realize, and by the way, he doesn't really post that much on X, like just a couple posts, and then he does these two. So it's very suspicious.
It is very suspicious. And what I thought most suspicious was someone said, well, why haven't you released the footage? And he said, and what were you doing at the time of the crash? And he said, I'd prefer not to say. I'd kind of like you to say.
Publications like this will take it and they'll go with it. No questions asked.
The one I saw, there was a great one circulating on Reddit the other day that said Elon got mad at a guy and disabled his rear steering. And I wouldn't even click on it. I'm not even going to, that's nonsense. And then I'm over on X and I see, it's Dirty Tesla.
It's Dirty Tesla. And Dirty Tesla was being very sarcastic.
He made a joke and now it's fact. It is all over. And again, mainstream media can pick this up and do terrible, lazy, clickbaity work, but social media is no better. It was still circulating on X as the gospel, which I guess comes down to how you feel about the gospel. Maybe you don't believe it. So then let's get into some good news. Shall we have some good news today? I feel like that might be appropriate. Hola, Mexico. Have you seen this?
I saw this. It's not only Mexico, but also Puerto Rico. I think this is a big deal. This is bigger deal than people are, making out to be. So sure, FSD beta now available in Mexico, and they've been testing this out there. But this is a brand new country, different language, different roads, maybe not some parts, a little bit not as a modern city, for example, in some parts. It's just so much more unique of the way that things are going to be run. And so just the fact that FSD can run there, that's a shock, right? It's not like you had, a team of testers testing the entire country of Mexico prior to launching, mapping every single thing. You just say, we're going to do it here. It's still FSD beta. So it's still very much, early days, but you drop the car in, it starts to learn. And the interesting thing is, again, there are some nuances of how the rules are and how you drive and the language. So I just think it's a much, much bigger a deal than people are realizing it is.
Well, I had asked the question, Cortex, you've got all this compute power. FSD is approaching complete. Once it is complete, I guess you could add another couple nines to it, but you will reach a point where of diminishing returns. What do you use Cortex for at that point? And the answer is all the other markets, because the driving style is different. East Coast versus West Coast. It is different in the US versus Mexico. It is different in rural Mexico versus urban Mexico. And there's a lot of challenges there. But from a financial perspective, this unlocks new revenue streams. You could argue, well, maybe the market is not wealthy enough to support it. Hey, there could be regional pricing on FSD, like there's regional pricing on Starlink. But more importantly, there will be new revenue recognized because of this. There will be more people buying because it exists, and the cost to deploy it is very, very low. And then, FSD, Tesla said in September it plans to introduce FSD in Europe and China in the first quarter of this year. We're already halfway through this quarter.
Yeah.
I don't know how far along that is, but okay, so fine. It doesn't happen in Q1. It happens in Q2. It happens in Q3. That's still new revenue streams from FSD. Am I crazy? Wait, don't answer that. Am I crazy about this?
Yeah. So I am a little concerned. I'm starting to keep my eye on this, is FSD in China. So why hasn't they, announced that FSD allowed in China? And this is where I hope and I wonder whether or not there's going to be this deal that needs to be made with Tesla in China, right? You got to give me FSD in exchange. I'll give you more megapack factories. I'll start building more, something like that. Or, it seems to me that they might, again, this is no data on my side at all. I have no idea, but I just want to be just kind of watching to see what's the relationship. I think the relationship is very strong. Zero chance that there is a breakdown between China and Tesla. They love Elon, they love Tesla, and it's all going great, this partnership between them. It's just this FSD part, right? Because you heard Elon say at the earnings call how they're not allowed still today to be able to take the videos of their Tesla cars in China. They're not allowed to use that to train it because the supercomputers are in the US, and they are not allowed to build the supercomputer in China using NVIDIA chips. They're kind of in that holding pattern, and that's what Elon said in the earnings call. So there has to be some sort of deal made where Tesla is allowed to go in there and start using those videos.
I wonder if a deal is being made. I used to think that was a thing that Tesla would do, but we haven't seen evidence of it. Tesla and a lot of Elon's companies relocated to Texas, and they're still not able to have direct sales in that state. They found a number of little workarounds that make it less painful, but there are still restrictions. But the bad news, Herbert, because I know you gotta help me out here, is I don't know if you've heard, but there's an investor who slams FSD on Cybertruck. It's not usable. It's not even in the same league as Waymo. I don't know if you've heard of this gentleman. He's named by Ross Gerber. Ross, what are you doing, man? It's like a can of hair gel wish to be a real boy. I don't know. And really, this is my question, is what happened? Well, he reported multiple disengagements.
Listen, don't spend time talking about Gerber. The guy is obviously just a year ago, he was praising how great FSD is. He, took that other guy on a ride. Dan. So now he's anti-Tesla, anti-Elon. He sold almost all his shares. I think he only has 300 shares at this point. He'll claim that, of course, his firm manages a lot of shares, millions of shares for his clients, but he himself, as a firm or himself, doesn't own. I don't know what his personal ownership is. So he is bashing Tesla at this point, and that's what he's going to do. So I don't take anything he says as any kind of any truth for it. By the way, at some point, let me share you my story with FSD at some point.
Please. Well, actually, do that right now.
Okay. So as you and I are fairly similar in the way that we've approached FSD over the years, right? That you have been very careful. You don't like when you hear somebody say FSD is amazing, it's great, it's already ready to go. You're very, very careful about that. Even like as early as, or as late as 6 months ago, you were and then you start to test out 12 and version 13, and then you started to say, this is, the facts. Here's what I'm doing. Same thing with me, right? I'm very, I just test FSD for the first 2 weeks. And if I see that has lots of problems, at least I understand it, but I'm not one to just keep using it, even though it has all these problems. When 13 came out, everything changed. At that point, I started using it daily. But 13.2, which is what I'm using now, this weekend, I went with a long drive with my wife from my driveway to Seattle, from Seattle, which is, we live in a neighborhood around Seattle, to Vancouver, Canada. Came back driveway to driveway, about 7 hours of driving, multiple countries, right? 2 countries, multiple cities within there, different kinds of driving. You're talking about highways in the US, and you got like these narrow roads in Vancouver, Canada. Car was flawless. The only times I disengaged, there was no critical disengagement. And the only times was when I purposely wanted to do it, right? Starbucks drive through, supercharging, trying to get, the border. I was on a Nexus line, getting through the border. Everything else, just the car did it. And it was not only flawless, it was so smooth that my wife enjoyed it. And in the highways in the US, they have in Washington State, there's a rule, right? There's a law that says you're not allowed to drive in the far left lane unless you're passing. You go stick in the middle. And so this car did that beautifully, right? It would always, as soon as a car passed, then it would turn its blinker, move behind it, and then go back in. Move behind it, go back in. And then my wife was saying, hey, I don't like that, right? I don't like that this car, by the way, that's how I drive. In fact, I always stay on the left lane because I'm always passing. So I figured I'm fine. Unless a car behind me comes in me, then I'll move to the middle lane. But she didn't like that this car was, in her mind, like, moving too often. So then I said, oh, okay, let's try out on the way home. We used chill mode and it drove 5 miles above the speed limit, 60 miles per hour. And it stayed in the far right lane. And she's going, this is perfect. Perfect. I'm happy. And so not only was the highway driving great, but in the Vancouver, Canada, there's 2-lane narrow roads and lots of traffic both ways, right? And at any time, somebody in the left lane could decide I'm going to turn left.
Yes.
And if they do that, it backs up and you're stuck in this lane, sitting there waiting for this guy. And there's like lots of cars. So he's got a long wait. This car anticipated, FSD would anticipate that was about to happen, sneak in, perfect timing so that it's, still a little gap there, gets into the right lane, gets back into the left lane. And it did it so much better than I would have done. And it was just so wonderful. So 7 hours straight driving, multiple cities, all over the place. Perfect. I couldn't believe it. It was just so amazing. And this is just my experience. One time, of course, doesn't mean it's robotaxi ready, but certainly if it can do that for 7 hours, getting freaking close.
You're on the right path. So a couple quick stories. I was on those same roads in Vancouver when I went up to fully charge last time. Right. And I was on a medium version of 12, not a later version, a fairly early version of 12. And I was in that left lane. So you've got 2 lanes going. And then, like you said, these guys can cross and block. And I was in the lane that got blocked. And I was like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to, let's see what happens. I'll just wait. I'll just miss you know what? Oh, we're over and we're past it. I was like, oh, you've had practice in this town, my friend. And it has had practice. I drove this weekend to Platt Auto to do some reviews. It was 60 miles each way. And on the way there, I said, you know what? Let's do Starbucks. I added it as a destination. It took me to a Starbucks and I disengaged because it wanted to park.
Won't go in a drive-through?
It wanted, well, I didn't tell it. I didn't. That's something that might have to come later, but it was like, no, let's park. You're here, let's park. I'm like, nice. I will do the drive-through though. Yeah. We went all the way there. I did at one point disengage out of an abundance of caution because there was an ambulance coming and I was too focused on it. So I just hit the brake. And then when I looked forward, I realized there was a car stopped in front of me. It definitely would have stopped either way, but that's an abundance of caution. And then it drove us all the way back. No problem. Door to door. It's getting real close, but unfortunately,
one feature I wish it had is use the HOV lanes. So it knows that there's 2 people in my car. It should have used it. It didn't use the HOV lanes at all. Now it didn't need to in this particular drive because it wasn't that busy. But if it was busy, I wish it knew to do that.
So on my drive back, on my navigation, I've set to don't use HOV. On my drive back, it put me in the HOV lanes, and I asked the kids why. And I was like, is it because it can sense that you're here? So it may already be there, and it just didn't need to use it in your case.
It didn't need to. That's correct. Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. Okay.
So it's possible.
Cool.
We will find out. But we got bad news. We got to cover FSD. Herbert, Tesla needs you to use its full self-driving so badly, it's going to give you money.
Is that the way they positioned it?
Look at that headline.
Hilarious.
That's hilarious.
That's how they positioned it. That's hilarious.
Oh my gosh. It's great that we got so much flesh in this photo. Thank you, Mac Logan.
Isn't that hilarious
Mac
that that's how they positioned that? I would never have thought to even think this.
I mean, that is amazing. That is a quality headline, as long as we remember that low is a type of quality. So guys, what are your thoughts on FSD? Yes, I have been very bearish in the past. I am much less bearish now. I just got 13.27 last night. I have done only one brief drive in it this morning. It didn't go well, but I didn't have any cameras, so I'm not going to share it. I will get the cameras in the car. And the first thing I'll do is take it back to that Costco where it struggled so much last time, hilariously. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And I can see why the team in Austin is working so aggressively to get it road tested. I can see where this is going, and I have confidence. Guys, head over to Herbert's channel, see what he's up to. Remember that every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific, we do a co-stream on his channel, on my channel, on the channel of Nick from Investing Against the Grain. We have some pretty interesting discussions, sometimes some special guests. Everybody else, like, subscribe, and stay tuned, stay juicy. I cannot wait to hear from you clever robots on the next one.